Well, this time of year is a great time to maybe correct any planting mistakes that you've made in your yard or landscape. And by planting mistakes, we're talking about things that maybe are planted in partial shade or shade that needs to be moved to sunlight, or maybe things that are a little bit overcrowded. And we're in one of our beds closest to the barn, which we're going to convert over to a perennial bed, and we started that last year. But we've got a few problems in here that we need to correct, and it's mainly just by cutting things back and moving it to another location. Now our next bed over too is one that we want to make into a perennial bed, and we've got some weigelia there that are some pretty woody shrubs that have really just overgrown the bed. They're too close and they're very aggressive, and when we cut them back they sucker and just seem to spread even more. So we'll be moving those out to some of the parameters of our studio gardens, and we'll have to prune them back pretty severely and try to keep as much of the root ball intact. Now on the woody ornamentals, some of them it's a good idea to do that in the fall, but we're still at a time where we can do it safely, and we're early enough before the hot weather and the drought sets in, and we'll give them a little bit of care, and I think we can move them successfully. Then our next bed, we've got some daylilies that we planted last year, and we've got a buddleia and some other plants that are really taking over, so we're going to have to move those out closer to the border and make them more of a border plant. And then over in our other bed where we're trying to grow some annuals and make that one of our display annual beds, we've got our chrysanthemums, and they've done beautifully for us every year, but they're really spreading and we need to divide them, and now would be a good time to do that. So we'll cut back the dead foliage and we'll move those over into some of our beds that we're establishing for perennials. Now the bed that I'm in here, if you'll remember last year, we put in some salvia, and they're perennial salvia, and we've got 3 different types. We've got the tall one here that got about 3 or 4 feet, just breathtaking, beautiful purple flowers. Then we put in front of that a couple of pinkish purplish or pinkish rosy colored flowers, and then some more varieties in front of that, but they're really too close. So we're going to come in and we're going to just cut back some of the top growth on those. And we'll just use some pruning shears, and we'll just come in and find the crown and cut them back fairly close, maybe about 3 inches from the ground. And we're just going to move them out to the front of the bed so we'll fill up more space. But before we can do that, we've got to come in and move some of our roses. Now what we've done, we've got a couple of Maitland roses here, and they just keep continually growing out into our Bermuda grass area. So we're going to move those over into an area where Alan is building us some raised beds that we're calling our formal gardens. So we're going to move all of our roses out, including the ones behind me. We're going to dig them, transplant them, and put them into our formal gardens. And that'll give them more space to grow and get a lot of colorful blooms, and it will give us room to move up some more of our perennials. Now the first thing that we're going to have to do on the roses, if you look at it closely, you can see that this time of year they've already broken dormancy. It's a good time to go ahead and prune roses, but we're going to cut these back severely. And we could have done this a little bit earlier even, but we're still at a safe time where we can transplant them. So we're really not using our general recommendations on pruning roses because we want to cut them back to about 4 to 6 inches, and then we'll transplant them over into our bed. So we're just going to go in and do some severe pruning right off the start. Well, we're also going to move our landscape rose, Carefree Wonder, and notice that we've left the height a little bit more on this one, about 8–10 inches compared to our Maitland roses, since they're a little bit lower growing. Plus, if you'll remember, last fall we put this protective barrier around it and filled it with compost to help protect the bud on the rose here so it wouldn't freeze back during the winter, and it's really paid off. We've got a lot of nice green growth, and we've got new foliage coming on here, so we'll dig this one up and move it too. But we've finished pruning the Maitland rose, and again, notice it's about 4 to 6 inches closer to the ground, and we've pulled all the leaves and debris around. We've got a few weeds that we'll still need to pull out, but we've used a sharpshooter shovel and we've cut around it. We've got a nice little root ball here, and we're just going to move this over onto some of our remay that we had left over from last year, just to kind of hold it together long enough to get it over to our other planting space. So we're going to load this up in the tractor, and I'll have you meet me over there, and we'll show you one of our new raised beds where we're going to put our rose garden. Well, this is a new home for our roses, and we're over in our expansion gardens, as we've referred to it over the past several years, and we're finally building onto it. And we're starting the first of our raised beds in an area that we're going to refer to as our formal gardens. And we felt like the roses really needed some special care, and they would kind of stand out a little bit more in a raised bed, not to mention it's a lot easier to keep them under control and to take care of them. Now, we've got a real nice soil that we've worked up here with some of our silage topping that you've heard us talk about for our organic matter. We've got a sandy loam soil where we've got a lot of good drainage, and then any other kind of organic matter that you can work in a raised bed would be the best time to do it, such as maybe alfalfa or just compost in general. Again, remember, it needs to be well drained and really rich in organic matter. So we've incorporated a little bit of fertilizer in ours to start with, a triple 13, to add a little bit of phosphorus and potassium. Now we've got our 2 Maitland roses planted because, again, they're going to be very aggressive, and we'll still have to train them and prune them to keep them from growing over the raised bed. They're going to be that aggressive. But in the corner here, we wanted a little bit of height, and that's where we're going to put our Carefree Wonder Rose. Now, in transporting it over here in our trailer, we knocked the soil off, and we decided just to go ahead and clean it up and do some root pruning to get it to fit in our hole. One thing that I want to remind you of, if you lose a soil, it won't hurt it, because remember, a lot of them come in bare root anyway. Just don't forget to keep it soaked in water if it's going to be exposed to the air temperature for very long. So we're ready to plant ours. We're not going to put in a lot of fill or anything, just our soil that we have mixed up. Don't forget that you want to let the bud union, where it's been budded, above the soil line, so you don't want to get it too deep. And then just fill it in. And again, anytime you're growing roses, the soil is real important to get it just as rich as you can with organic matter. And that will really save you a lot of problems in the future. And we'll pack that down gently, and we're going to, again, bring our soil level up, but we'll make a little ridge around to hold the water, so it's real crucial to keep them watered in. Now, we still have a chance of frost for the next few weeks here in Stillwater, and we're not going to be concerned about damaging the entire plant because I don't think it'll get too cold. We may lose some of the leaflets that are coming out, but we're going to mulch over it, and again, I don't think we'll have a problem in getting it established. Just worry mostly about the water, and in the springtime with all the rains that may be coming later on, we'll have good drainage with our raised bed. So we'll keep you informed on how the rose bed progresses, as well as our other studio expansions.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.